All right. Here we go. Okay, there we go. Good. We are live on Facebook. Hey, everybody. Hope everyone's having an awesome Friday. Friday. Is it Friday? Is it Tuesday? Who knows? Whatever. It's all good. I am so excited to be here with you today. So, some of you may have already seen Kimberly before. She came on and we did an interview about investing in apartments. And so let me just introduce who Kimberly is, like in our organization. Well, for one, she is a long time friend. We have known each other for 13 years, and she is like my soul sister. But that's not relevant to all this page. Let's talk about what's relevant. So, a lot of you in this group are here to learn about passive income investing, and some of you have been doing it, and you're moving up to the levels of apartments. Well, Kimberly is our elite apartment coach. So you'll start to see her periodically popping on and talking about apartment stuff, but she had an idea the other day that I was like, oh my gosh, people are going to love it. And so I'll let her tell the whole story, but she is about to go through a live 1031 exchange with a family member, helping a family member through it. And she was like, what if we just did like a live a couple days a week and just talked about what's happening now and find like some of the learning lessons and just share the real story, let people like go on the journey with us. And I was like, dude, that's amazing. So that's what we're here to do. So Kimberly, I'll let you just take it from here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the situation, the deal, and this will be video one, and let's do it.
Okay, awesome. Let's do it. I'm so excited. So, and thanks, Stacey, for letting me do this and share it with the group, because I remember when I was getting started in real estate back in 2008 that I just wanted to like watch like a fly on the wall an investor do something, because maybe I could like pick up a tip, a trick or something, just slurp off their energy, whatever. I just wanted to follow along. So I thank you for letting me do this with your group and share and let everyone follow along. So this is it. This is the real deal. Okay, so 1031, let's start there. First of all, what is a 1031? Why do we care? When do I use it? And this is not going to be like super in-depth training. Just kind of high level, give you guys some backup in case you don't know. And we can always answer questions and stuff later too. So 1031. So if you have a property and you have had it for a long time, or you inherited it, and now it has some equity in the property and you want to go sell it, the trick is you don't want to give all that money to the government and have them take all those taxes, right? Let's just keep this really simple. You want to keep as much money as possible, and you certainly want to pay your fair share of taxes, because that means you've made money, and making money is not a bad thing. Clearly, it keeps the economy going. So a 1031 is an IRS tax code. That's where the name comes from. And it gives us investors the opportunity to keep all that money without having to give any of it to the government, so long as we keep it in play in the economy, right? Like that's their goal. Their goal is to keep the money in the economy, keep it in real estate, keep it moving, keep it in a business. And in exchange for that, they don't penalize us as many times as we upgrade our assets and portfolio. So there's a couple tricks to it. And that is, first of all, you have to have property. So we got to start there. And you got to be selling it. So we got to start there. And then the trick is, it's a timing issue, really, a lot of it, right? So there's a couple things about 1031s that are really important. One is your intent. And again, we're going to kind of keep this high level and let you sort of watch along as we go through stuff. But your intent of the property is really important. So if you bought a property and you planned, let's say you bought land and you plan to develop it, and then you didn't develop it, and now you want to exchange that into an apartment building, that could be a problem. And you need to work very closely with your exchange agents and very closely with your CPA who's handling your taxes, because the intent matters. So the basic idea is that you're going to exchange like and kind, right? So you're going to take income property and exchange it for another income property. That's kind of the basics. And so in this situation that everyone's going to follow along with, there were a couple little tricks that we had to deal with. So first of all, we are doing this with my mom. So y'all will probably at some point in time get to meet my mom, who is cute as a stinking button. Oh my God, she's just so freaking adorable. She's a cutie. So, and so you'll probably get to meet her at some point in time when we're probably out walking whatever property we end up buying for her. And one of the tricks in this 1031 was she inherited a ranch. So my great grandparents homesteaded in New Mexico. And it's just fascinating. I like to look at connections. But so they homesteaded in New Mexico, about 10 sections of land, which is about 10 square miles, give or take. Okay, so it's a lot of land. And originally they farmed, and then after that they were ranching, they were running cattle. When my grandparents, my grandmother and her brother kind of took over, they inherited it. And so they had been running cattle on this. So it was technically an income producing land. So you got to keep that foundation in there, right? This is an income producing land. And then when my grandmother passed away a few years back, and my mom and her brother inherited the property, they inherited it basically as joint tenants in common. So both of them are on title, and they both have 50-50 share of the land. And again, here's one of the tricks. They have been leasing the land out to one of the neighboring ranchers who has continued to run cattle on it. So they've continued generating income. Really, really important, because that was one of the first questions that I had when we were talking to the 1031 agent and to our CPA, our tax preparer. I was like, I want to make the argument that we're going to take a ranch and go buy an apartment building. They don't look alike, but can we do this? And here's why I think we can do this, was because the intent has always been income producing property, right? So, okay, foundation number one, you can switch up the type of asset, but it's got to be the same intention. So income producing. And everyone's like, yep, that absolutely works. No problem. And then one of the questions as we've kind of been going through this, was, so my mom wants to do a 1031, but my uncle has his own share. So can they do these separately? Do they have to do this together? How does that work? And lo and behold, you do not have to do them with somebody else you have on title with. You can both make different choices when you sell the asset. Okay, so that's really important. And again, that was an issue that we worked out with our 1031 agent. And so 1031 agents, I guess, let me talk about that for a second, because they're so important. And I love having really smart people around who know more than I do, right? Because people that know lots of really cool stuff, and you know them, then you know lots of really cool stuff. So the 1031 agents are super, super, super important, and they are not all created equally. So we have a really, really good 1031 agent who specializes with investors. And he's also very, very well connected on the national level with the IRS. He's actually been in the forefront of handling some of the issues that have been coming out of this whole COVID crisis, which we'll talk about. So anyway, the 1031 agent, he walked us through handling and answering some of these questions about what we could and couldn't do, and being able to set up a 1031 exchange for my mom, even though my uncle is totally doing something, he can do whatever he wants. He can do a separate 1031, he can take the cash, all that kind of stuff. So that's been kind of interesting. And so with a 1031, it's really important. It comes down to timing, because that's where you really got to pay attention to all this. And so we've known for a while that the sale of the ranch was coming, and we've been planning for it and kind of anticipating it, and starting to shop and look for property, because that's going to be one of the tricks of this whole deal, to make sure that the 1030 works and it doesn't blow up on us. Because if it blows up, then my mom's got to pay capital gains. So that's the goal. We're going to avoid the capital gains and keep the money in play. And so timing becomes a really big deal about all of this. And so she's closing escrow on Monday is when this is all supposed to happen. And then technically she's got 45 days to identify her new properties. So technically she can identify up to 3 properties or up to, I believe it's 200% of the 1031 value. So I know that 3 properties is not a hard and fast rule, and we can talk about that at some point in time. So valuation matters. So 45 days, that's really the crunch that's about to kick off for us. And then she's got 180 days total to actually close on the properties. So that's like a really long time, 6 months. I mean, that's more than plenty of time, right? You and I know, right? We've bought buildings. That's 6 months is plenty of time. It's the 45 days that, causes some heart palpitations in here going, okay, it's go time. And not only is it go time, but it's go time in the middle of like a pandemic, but that's okay. we got this. We still got this.
Have you guys already been shopping for property?
Yeah, we have actually. I've been doing just some light cursory shopping since probably back in January when Mom and my uncle made the decision that they were going to do this. And it's, it's really a huge honor and gift to be a part of this process for my family, for me, to help them. It's pretty humbling because if I look at this full circle, right, my great grandparents bought this land, and it took care of them. It took care of my grandmother and my great uncle when they took it over and continued to run cattle, and my grandmother was leasing this land. So it's like you got that real estate in your blood. And then when my mom and her brother inherited it, it's been part of a larger portfolio that's taking care of them, and it's really a huge honor. So my mom and her brother really haven't gotten into real estate. Like they've done a little bit of it, but not nearly like what you and I have done and made careers out of this, right? And then what else is kind of cool is that on my uncle's side, one of my cousins is a commercial banker. So we've got like the cousins have, are looking out for our parents, which is really kind of cool. And that they're letting us, because it's a little weird sometimes, right? Like doing business with family can be a bit interesting. And there's always those dynamics of like, I have to laugh sometimes or remind my mom, like we're talking and she'll talk about some of my past careers or endeavors. And like, I'm like, Mom, I've been doing real estate since 2008, right? Like this, this isn't new. Like I've done a lot of real estate. People pay me a lot of money to help them with their real estate problems and fix their portfolio anyway. But so, so to have them let me help has been really cool. Really, really cool. On so many levels. Yeah. Like, just all of this is happening, day by day, and things are evolving. So like even back at the beginning, because I've been through a lot of real estate transactions like you, right? And so we know, you and I know, like all of this stuff that's coming and the timeline and the planning. And I prefer to have as little crisis as possible because there will be crisis no matter what. Right. But if I can avoid it, I'm going to do everything I can to have all of those checked off ahead of time. And anyone that's worked with me knows that that's one of my superpowers. I will get things organized way in advance because there's always stuff that comes up at the last minute. So when I was telling my mom back in like January that we were going to need to start looking, in February that we needed to actually talk to the CPA, actually it was probably January. I'm like, Mom, we got to have a call with the CPA and we got to talk about if you need to do a 1031, how much are we 1031ing? What does this look like? Because the reality is she could have just taken the money and potentially had a very minimal capital gains penalty on it. So that's something that everyone should be aware of, that just because you're selling the property doesn't mean that you have to do a 1031. Talk to your tax professional, have a conversation, and basically what we did was, and this is where I just love, again, smart people who know all this stuff about taxes and basis, and they can calculate all that really super fast. And, in about a 10-minute phone call, he's like, all right, what was the value when you inherited it? Okay, great. How much of it have you depreciated over the time that you've owned it? Okay, great. How many improvements have you made to on this property over the time that you've had it? Okay, great. Awesome. So here's how much, what do you think you're selling it for? Okay, great. So here's how much money that you potentially are at risk having to pay capital gains on, which is not all of it. That's a really important thing to understand. It's not 100% of the sales price. You have to calculate, and you know this with your background, you have to calculate the basis, and then from there, what's the gain? And it's the gain that we're trying to protect. And it was a really interesting realization that if somebody out there is listening and you potentially are going to be inheriting property, this is really where this message is for you. If you're going to be inheriting property, the easiest time for you to sell the property without having to get stuck in a 1031 is when you inherit it. Because when you inherit that property, there's this beautiful thing called stepped up basis. And basis is one of those underlying numbers that everything on that asset gets calculated out going forward while you hold it. That's a simple way to try to describe it. And so really, for my mom to have avoided a 1031 without any capital gains penalty would have been to have been selling the property within the first couple of years of her ownership, which is just wasn't what they were ready for. And that's okay. That's okay. But for those of you out here who are listening, who are very blessed to be potentially inheriting property, keep that in mind, that there's a lot of benefits potentially for you to not have to do a 1031. And I'll tell you why you don't want to do a 1031 here in a second. To not do a 1031 and then to be able to take that money and to go do other things with it. So why don't you want to do a 1031? You don't want to do a 1031 because once you get started in a 1031, the name of the game is swap till you drop. You will stay in that 1031 anytime you are selling property going forward. Otherwise, if you're 3 properties down the line and you have all of that lovely equity that you've built and you decide to pull it out, then the IRS is not happy. And then you've got to go back and pay all that capital gains that you've been trying to protect. So really 1031s are cool because you can keep that, as long as you keep that equity in play, you keep it in the industry, then really it's a beautiful way to pass on that asset to your heirs. And if you don't have heirs or you don't like your heirs and you want to donate it to charity, that's fine too. Go give it to, the SPCA or whatever, but then they don't have to pay the capital gains on it. So I don't know, that was a lot of stuff there.
Well, I think that's really cool. And I think this is going to be a fun series. And so what we're going to be doing, guys, is coming on, I think our next meeting is on Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific. And then we're doing it again, but next Thursday around 11 a.m. And it's just going to be a quick little 5-10 minute update on what's going on. And but we really just wanted to lay out kind of the foundation of like, what is a 1031 exchange? Now, a lot of you are in this group are new or newer to investing. So it might not be relevant yet, but as you're building your long-term wealth plan, 1031 exchange is without a doubt one of the biggest wealth building opportunities because of getting to defer the taxes. You could defer the taxes like literally forever until you die, like swap till you drop, like Kimberly said. So we just really want to lay the foundations that from a long-term planning strategy, what your options are. So you're starting to acquire now. We have a lot of people in our mastermind that have just in the past couple of months purchased properties. They're starting to acquire them. So you want to have a plan for 3, 5, 10, 20, however many years out for what are you going to do with those properties when you're ready to move into apartments. All right. And for those of you who are in the group, you want to get into apartments and you have purchased some properties, 1031 exchange is an awesome opportunity if you have equity to basically roll that money as a down payment right into your next asset. Your next bigger asset. So anyway, we're really excited to bring you this series. We'll be back here Monday evening to just talk about did the closing happen? Because the only thing we know about closings is sometimes they happen and sometimes they get delayed. So we'll see what happens. I have no idea. And we're just going to take it, every day that Kimberly and I get together to do this quick little live, just share with you what's going on, where the learning opportunities, and just educate you in little bits along the way. And we'll follow Kimberly's mom's journey through her first 1031 exchange. So anyway, Kimberly, thank you so much for being able to share this journey. And I think this is going to be awesome. And I love that you came up with this idea. It's
awesome. Well, we'll share the good, the bad, the ugly, and the wins for sure. So can't wait.
That's real estate, right? It's messy. And we're gonna have all the messy. It's gonna be there. We can talk about the problem solving, the creativity, all the things that are real about a real estate transaction.
Absolutely.
So, very cool. Kimberly, thank you. And everyone have an amazing weekend, and can't wait to see you on Monday evening.
Have a great one.